Okay, we are back, ladies and gentlemen. Hope everyone is having a good week so far. We're just gonna kind of get right into things and kick things off. Last time I know we were talking a lot about business, but we're gonna get back to I think 2 episodes ago when we were talking about ending chaos. So I'll let Frank get started, and then we'll just go on with our regular scheduled programming.
Yeah, so happy post Independence Day. And it's kind of interesting that as a nation we were celebrating independence, but my teacher says that we should learn how to be dependent. And for some of us, part of ending the chaos has to do with not necessarily being dependent upon another person, because some of the chaos that some of us are experiencing has to do with codependency, negative codependency.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're meant to be in community, and we talked about that. But the dependency that some of us probably needs to find ourselves in is dependency on the creator, on higher power. And first of all, I lift up prayers for those people who suffered loss in Central Texas. That is a tremendous tragedy. And for some people who are experiencing that unfortunality, that's chaos. A lot of young people who were at a camp, I understand, lost their lives. Last I heard, the president's going to make his way down there on Friday. So I remember someone asking in a chat, in situations like that, where is God? And that's a great question. Questions like that are not easily answered. I'm not going to pretend to have the answer to that. I will say that I believe that God is not the author of the chaos. One of my favorite superhero characters happens to be Batman. And I know for those Superman fans, there's another one of those coming out. Never was really a big Superman guy. He was a little too unrealistic for me. But that aside, one of my favorite Batman movies was the one starring Heath Ledger. And some of us believe that Heath Ledger got so deep into that role that he wasn't able to return. And those of us who know the actor I'm talking about know that he tragically passed. There's this one scene in that episode with Heath playing the Joker where Heath has bombed the hospital and he's walking away from bombing the hospital. And for me, it was one of the best scenes in cinema, because this look that Heath's character had on his face, the Joker, to me epitomizes what I would imagine the enemy of God, which in my faith is called him the devil. That look that he must have on his face after causing a flood like we saw in Central Texas, like Urkel would say, "Did I do that?" Now, I'm not going to put. I don't even know how to do the Urkel voice, so no, I'm not even going to try. Where am I going with this? So when we are experiencing chaos, the last thing we want to do is to isolate ourselves away from the solution, because there are a lot of people who are dealing with chaos and you're angry with your creator, and you're like f the creator because you have abandoned me. But I'm here to say that the creator didn't do that. The enemy of think about it. Let's think about this for a minute. Why would the creator do that? Why would a parent do that? Now, somebody that has beef with the parent, with the creator, would do something like that. But if you separate yourself and say, I'm not going to talk to, I don't want to hear anything about God. If he's truly the creator, then you separate yourself from your solution. So that whole dialogue that I just shared with you is to say, you being the audience, is to say that your first step to ending the chaos is to reestablishing your connection with your creator. Now, again, if you, like we said in the last one of these episodes where we were talking about ending the chaos, this idea that you didn't come from anything, that you came from a rock or that you evolved from a snake or something like that, that for me, that's the idea that has to be banished. You have a creator that was very intentional about seeing you on the planet. You have a purpose, and the number one thing necessary to ending the chaos is reconnecting with that creator. And with all the things that are going on, I can't beat around the bush. That's just kind of the bottom line. We're like, we don't have a lot of time to beat around the bush. There's too much going on. You got the floods, you got all these wars going on. It's too much. And then I'm gonna let Dre talk. Something is absolutely going on because here in Metro Atlanta, I'm seeing something that doesn't make a lot of sense. So we know that there are people who sometimes will be standing at the exit to the expressway. Back in the day, they were trying to clean your windshield. These days, they're selling waters. I'm not sure if I've got a big challenge with that, especially the water selling, because that's entrepreneurship. And you go to other countries, you see that on a whole nother level. So it's real soft. That's real soft in our country. My challenge is lately I've been seeing people on the actual expressway,
Mm.
and I know a guy who had a very traumatic experience a couple of years ago where one of those people that was on the expressway just wandered onto the expressway, like walking onto the expressway. It caused a horrific accident. And so, why am I sharing this? Because we as a community, we have to, first of all, talk about these outlandish things that are happening and come up with solutions to these problems. Some of it has to do with mental unwellness. There are different factors. There's an opioid problem that we haven't even had a chance to touch that I can recall on our podcast. We talked about some of the other stuff that's got people hallucinating and acting up. But there is an opioid problem, and this opioid problem is causing people to behave in a way that we've never seen before. But I'm going to stop. I've said a whole lot. I'm going to give you a chance to chime in on some of that, Trey.
Okay. Um. Yeah. Let's see. Okay. Starting with would the creator cause damage? I would say that. I mean, when you do read the Bible, he does have a lot of situations where he'll make examples of people. Although he promised never to destroy the earth through water again. Um, we never really know exactly what's going on in a lot of places, and a lot of times people, even people who we might view as innocent, get caught up in you know some punishment from other people. So that was just one thing with that. Also talking about people who are on the streets and doing like handing out kind of the panhandling that kind of goes on in Atlanta. I think when it does, at first it does seem harmless, but then when people do start to move into more dangerous areas, like onto the actual highway, that's where you know problems start to kind of increase. But I think that's why so many people were trying to nip it in the bud from when it started on the corners. Like for me, I've I've seen it so much now. Like it's something that it's very accustomed. Like on all of my exits that I've lived here in Atlanta, I've seen that where people kind of go out there is pretty much a daily routine. So I recognize a lot of the people who are out there. I do recognize that a lot of them are struggling with some form of mental illness or substance abuse. Um, and it always does conflict me when I come to these people sometimes, especially seeing them so many times. And early on, I definitely would stop and give them give them change here, give them change there, and then I started to understand that that was because especially if you leaving out of the city a couple of times a day, or you just driving around, then you might run into five people, and if you giving everyone $1, that's $5 a day, and just like you have to start. I had to start asking myself, like, yeah, what am I hoping that this money does for said person who I'm giving it to? So a lot of times I'd be like, okay, well, I'm just giving because it's the right thing to do, quote unquote. But to me, I was like, am I just pacifying the problem? Sometimes you give, and then it's once you give somebody money, it's not up to you what they do with it. So it's kind of one of those situations where you kind of realize that the money isn't the source of their issue at that particular point. Like, so you may be wanting to help, and you think that giving $1, some people give as much as $20. Like, there's no real sense. But you can even stop and give somebody $100, and then you'll see them out there the following day. So there's not necessarily a dollar amount that is going to save them from that situation, but it's more of a mindset thing. And that's when you realize that the monetary contributions isn't going to help. Like, if you do truly care, then you have to get out there and really interact with those people who are on the street, and that's not easy to do either. I don't know how many people have volunteered to help out the homeless, or even have had a chance to communicate with some of these people in a one-on-one fashion or a personal fashion. And even people in our own lives and family who may be struggling with that, it's not necessarily something easy to deal with. And there's people who are dedicated to try and eradicate those problems wholeheartedly, and it's still hard to find solutions. I'm part of different neighborhood efforts that try and help people find shelter, but a lot of people in those positions have been survive. Like, a lot of them are in survival mode, so they're just doing what they can, or they just doing the next thing that they know to do. So you can give them $100 today, they'll take that $100, and you might think, oh, $100 for a homeless person would last them a month, a week or something. They don't have, but they're not thinking in that mode. So your method of help might not is not necessarily going to be the solution that they need in order to change their circumstance. And if that is your goal, to change their circumstance, then you have to attack the problem in a little bit of a different way. And a lot of times that's where I had to realize, like, okay, me just continuing to throw whatever loose change I have at this person who's asking for it isn't necessarily going to be the resolution to the problem that I think it is. Or even if you wanted to just, because you can give them food as well, and a lot of times that's not necessarily what they're looking for. In some cases they are, but it really just depends. Like, you have to have a much more personal approach to how you want to help somebody in that situation, as opposed to just thinking that you can throw some money at them and then that'll, I think a lot of people do that just to, kind of feel better about themselves. But ultimately, it takes a lot more to impact your community, which is part of the reason why I've stopped. Because I also don't like opening my windows for people like that anymore. There's been a couple of situations over at the exits that I frequently get off at. But yeah, I think at my age now, back in the day, I was like, oh yeah, I got this to, or I was just, it almost came from a place of feeling like I was superior to them as well, which is a reason why I had stopped as well. You feel like, oh well, this, and I don't look down on people who are homeless. I think that they've had tough decisions to make, and continue to make tough decisions, but that doesn't make me any better or make them any worse than I am. In some cases, they may be in a better mental space than me. In some cases, I'm just saying that how I used to approach the solution to that problem is a lot different now, as opposed to what it was when I was younger, thinking that these people, it was my obligation to help them in that capacity. I do think you still lend a hand to help people, but it doesn't necessarily have to be monetary, especially if you want to have a lasting impact.
I think that one of the very important things you said is that, and this goes back to addressing this issue of ending the chaos, it begins with a mindset shift. So there are a lot of different tentacles to this issue, and I'm just going to make a couple of points as it relates to those people who are in transition and the people who are selling water. Number one, I think it's important that people, that we are equipped to do what we can do. So some of us are equipped to be on the front lines and actually be on the streets. And then some of us are equipped to help fund those organizations that are on the streets, putting boots on the ground. So, when you look at it from that standpoint, we all can contribute in some way, because there are organizations, there are church organizations, for an example, who have teams of people who physically go out there, and those people, they're trained to physically go out there. So there's some of us, we, maybe for physical reasons, we're not able to go out there. Some people aren't able to stand for long periods of time. So it doesn't make sense for you to go out there and be a part of a group that's attending to the homeless, but you can contribute. you know Sometimes at some of these bigger organizations, they will actually pull groups of people together to help pull the materials together that's going to go out to the streets. So maybe you might be the person to volunteer at that organization and help assemble the kits, the sanitary kits, for an example, that's going to be going out to the streets. So, or you might not have the time to volunteer, so you may have to reach in your pocket and support in that way. But part of the reason why we're having this conversation is that this idea that there's, well, I'm going to have a hands-off approach and there's nothing I can do. You're going to do something, because when I tell you that people are now on the expressways, not, and I'm not talking about selling water on the expressway, wandering on the expressway. That's a problem that everybody that drives is about to deal with. I'm seeing it happening more and more. So part of the reason why problems amplify is when people ignore things. Like I was just having a conversation with my father. He's a mechanic by trade, top pro, and he was saying that if you're driving and you notice that you got what appears to be smoke coming out of your AC your vents,
Hmm.
then that's not that's not something to ignore. It means that you've got a problem. Now he was sharing that as he was driving along years ago, he saw this coming from his vents, but he tried to act like he didn't see it because, of course, he knows that that's bad news. And a lot of times in our society, we can see things and then we try to act like we didn't see it, but we actually saw it. But then we also have to be cautious. And that's why I appreciate you saying that you had to weigh when to let your window down, because there's some people who are selling water and they're not as scrupulous as they should be. I read in the news that there was a new scam, and unfortunately, the ATL is high on the list as one of the places where a lot of scamming goes on. So this lady was told by a young man that was selling water, she let her window down. A lot of people don't carry cash anymore. So the guy
Hmm.
says, "Hey, let me get your phone, and I'll help you to cash at me." So she, in her own words, foolishly handed her phone over to this guy, and he cleared her cash app out. Basically, took thousands of dollars from her, because now they've got this new scam where you actually they've got this QR code, and what he did was he used her phone to hit the QR code that he had on some document, and when she hit that QR code with her phone, it and then he took her phone and finished the transaction.
Hmm.
So here's now we talked about doing a show on scamming. We still haven't done that show. We will, but do not give your phone to anyone that you don't know on the street selling whatever, and allow them to complete a transaction for you. That's a no-no. That's how you get scam plus. That's how you get scam plus to happen to you. Don't do that. And a lot of good-hearted people have gotten into trouble handing their phone over to some fast-talking, or even here in the South, slow-talking criminal.
Yep. Those transactions. I mean, but that goes in the same. That's what we have to keep in mind when it does come to people selling things on the corner. Those are still transactions, and shady transactions at that. And like a lot of times we don't know where this where they're getting their supplies from. A lot. I mean, obviously, a lot of times they're just going to the gas station buying a couple of water bottles to flip, but it's like we have to realize like I was because when the waters first started coming, of course I wanted to support, but then it's like I got a whole car full of water bottles that I done spent $10 on. I didn't even need the water. So when you start to just trying to support a cause and not for just the sake of it, or at first it was out of respect for the entrepreneurial spirit. You like, well, they're not doing, they could be selling other things, so but that encourages the wrong type of hustle, like, and especially when it's not coming off as professional, we're doing them a disservice because we're not challenging them to improve their skills. It's like, oh, you just giving people hot water now. It's like, invest, get a, make a nice bucket, like, and then there'll be areas where they're doing it and the area itself is kind of trashed. So it's like clean up the area first and then try, like, make the environment more inviting, I would say. Like, but if there's a stack of trash and clothes right behind you and you selling water, then that's a different vibe. Of course, people don't want to open up their window for that. So, and there's been so many times when I've seen young kids selling water on it, and I'm like, maybe I should stop and talk to these kids and stuff. But also, that's, you don't know how these kids. I'm sure a lot of people have tried to talk to them, and it's not necessarily about giving up, but it's just what's an appropriate time and place to have those communicate, to have that type of talk with these kids, because a lot of kids, they'll be like, if you're not giving me any money, I really don't, like, you're taking my time away from another car that could, would potentially, they're not really necessarily looking at how to improve. They're just trying to get the money right there. And it's like, it's kind of respect, or I've seen so many pass it, kind of chuck it up to respect the hustle, but it's gonna do a lot of damage to professionalism moving forward as the years come on, because a lot of kids like, well, I used to sell water on the corner, so I know I could sell this, or I could get a different sales job. But it's like we're not really allowing them to get real skills, like, set up a stand. Like, it's not even a lemonade stand, so it's just like that's almost like the bare bones of sales right now. So it's, I know they've tried to put an end to it, and for the most part, I don't see as many kids doing it anymore, which is good. That was really the problem, I think, especially not all kids, but a couple of kids just get some bad ideas and want to act out in an area, and it ruins it for everybody else. But you can't just, when you allow that to go for so long unchecked, then something bad is bound to happen. There's no real legal protections for this. If they they sell you a bad water bottle, even though it's only water, but say anything goes wrong, there's no liability. So it's just not smart to do those types of transactions, even though it may not be a scam. It's just, get the water from a from an actual gas station when you need it. Don't just say, oh, feeling bad for it. Like, I think a lot of it comes from pity. Like, there's a lot of pity sales. So people are like, well, they out here trying. It's like, they didn't do anything to entice you to really buy. They didn't, it's like they're not getting those sale skills. And so just buying things out of pity doesn't help anybody, even if you think that you're supporting their entrepreneurial ambitions. It would be better to just give them some advice to do something more tangible, or at least create something, instead of just flipping these waters. I don't know how much they're making. I know that maybe at the height of it, people were making some kids were making some decent money, but yeah, I think that time is past.
Now, one of the things that I also wanted to say in terms of this whole mindset set shift, and there's a lot of tentacles to this, and maybe one day it would be good to have somebody who is an expert at working with people who are in transition. But I remember, and I might have shared this on this platform a few years ago. We were promoting an event, and that was taking place in taking place in the Bluff. And I came across this guy, and he began telling me his story why him taking part in this event at the financial center didn't make a whole lot of sense to him because he didn't even have an ID or anything like that. And he went on this mention that I think he was in his early 60s at the time. So I said, you know, well, just straight up, man, why don't you have an ID? You're a grown man. What do you mean you don't have an ID? What do you mean you are going to the church down the street to get get a little work to do to make ends meet? And not after conversating with him for a minute, he went into uh, how he hadn't really recovered from the challenges of his childhood. And I'm thinking, you're over 50 years removed from your childhood. And for some of us, and I think I've talked about this on this platform before, but it bears repeating. What's great about today is that there are resources all over the place that we can take advantage of. And the people that I'm talking to, you're not in transition. And you and I, we want to do everything to not be in that predicament. And part of what might help us is to get the support that we need. Because if you feel like, wow, I haven't been able to get to that next point because of something my mom did or something my dad did, and it might have been foul, heinous, but again, there's counseling. There's all kinds of organizations, state-based organizations, church-based organizations that's designed to help you to work through those challenges. And some people will argue, well, I had a session 2 years ago and it didn't do anything. Well, depending upon how severe the challenge was that you dealt with, it may take more than one session. And then again, some people will say, well, I was able to get this when I was working, but now I'm not working, I can't afford it. We can always come up with a reason why not. But if you decide that it's something that you want to see happen, it can happen. Even if it means using what they used to call the Obama phone and getting your counseling in the beginning through YouTube. I never forget the story of an entrepreneur. She had gotten laid off from her company, and she decided that, okay, I've got to plot my comeback. She knew that she wasn't the kind of person that could work from home and feel like she was viable, like she was succeeding, because she was used to going to work and getting out of the house. Every day she got up the same time she would when she was employed by said company. She would go to Starbucks. And I didn't mean to do that. She went to a coffee shop. Again, once they're sponsoring us, then we drop names like that. She went to a coffee shop every day. She bought a cup of coffee and she got on her laptop. And of course, in the beginning, she would go there trying to look, filling out applications and trying to look for other jobs. But after a while, she said, wait a minute, I can create my own thing. And so it went from her going there to look for jobs to her using that same laptop to come up with a plan. And you know where I heard her story? I heard her story at a Black Enterprise conference because she had created her own job. She created her own company in public relations. Again, I don't remember the name of it right now, but it became successful that Black Enterprise invited her as a speaker.
Mm.
That could be that could be you. There's somebody right now trying to end the chaos. You may have you may have been laid off, and all the cuts that happened at the end of 24, beginning of 25. You're trying to end the chaos. There's a way out, but it starts with a shift in your thinking. If you're thinking there's no way out, as long as you're married to that thought, there's no way out.
Definitely a mindset thing. Definitely a mindset thing. And when it does come to putting things together, it's it is finding another way out. Like you just have to explore all options. So the same amount of time that you are putting into, find another job, it's like sometimes you have to put that same amount of effort into creating another job for yourself when that's a little bit more you have more control over. um, and I know that's something that a lot of people struggle with because there's only so many hours in the day, and you want to, a lot of people want that guaranteed money, like I put in X amount of hours, I can expect to get Y amount of dollars. So when you're not, when you kind of are trying to shift from that, then that's a very difficult task or concept to kind of wrap your mind around. Because when you're working for yourself, you can work 1,000 hours and not get paid $1, but that goes into, it goes into execution and making sure that you have you've set up things in the proper way to make sure that you are compensated for what you choose to work on. So that's one of those things where it takes a lot of upfront work, but it can pay off a lot more in the long run if you're willing to stick it out through the tough parts.
There's a couple of different things that I'm thinking of. For some people, for some of us, the challenge is not staying in our lane, not minding our own business. And one of my mentors is fond of saying that the best way to fail is to have broken focus. So for some of us, one of the number one things that we have to do in ending the chaos is to get back in our lane. There are people who there's a line in a LL Cool J song where he says he wants to see less fake rappers and more real pastors. And so there are people who should give up on this idea of rapping if you're supposed to be doing something else. I mean, you're either nice with it or you're not. And you've been literally now, for some people, don't misunderstand me. If you can rap and You just haven't gotten signed yet. That's one thing. But if in your mind you decided you're going to be a rapper because you figured out that that's a way to make money, but you can't actually rap, then you need to figure out what you're supposed to be doing, because you're 47. You've been trying to rap since you were in the fifth grade, and it's time for you to figure out what you're really supposed to be doing. This is like real talk right now. This is real talk. Stop goofing off. Now, on the other hand, there's some people who you've allowed fear to obliterate you. There's some common fears that people will own up to. One of the number one fears of all time is fear of public speaking. I remember years ago, the very first time that I was given an opportunity to speak publicly, I was terrified. But it was groundless because I hadn't really done it before, but it was just something that, shaking in my boots, terrified. And there are people right now who are gigless, who, if you were willing to step out there in that arena, you probably would do pretty well. There 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 are other people, they'll tell you flat out, I don't sell. I can't sell. And some of the top earners, period, are salespeople. Period. In fact, sales is in the top three in the area of gross income, at least in the United, but probably worldwide.
Mm.
You got all these people who flat out refuse to do any selling, and some of those people who refuse to do selling can sell. Now, I do believe I had a cousin who I believe he just was gifted to sell things. Most people are naturally gifted to do a lot of things. That's why there are books on different subjects. You can learn to be good. You can learn to be good at selling. Their whole training course is on selling. Now, does that mean that you will ever be the top salesperson in the world? Maybe not. But if you if you haven't had a position, if you haven't had gainful employment in 5 or 6 years, and you're not willing to try, and the lane that you were in seems like it's gone up in smoke because of this new technology that's proliferating. So there are different sides to it. On one hand, some people need to stay in their lane, or B, find their lane, or C, let go of the groundless fear. You're petrified about something you haven't even tried.
Mhm.
I'll pause there and let you chime in.
Yeah, a lot of people are really just so afraid of failure. I think that's something I'm trying to adopt in terms of failing pretty often, fast as failing as many times as you can, because it's a percentage game. If you have to go through 100 reps before you get to something successful, then you're trying to get rid of the 99 unsuccessful things as quick as possible. So my whole thing is, you should be failing every day. If you should either have if you have one success, you need to have at least five failures, because that means that you just stopped at your first success. Then if you and you need to constantly be working towards bettering yourself, and that comes with a lot of failures. Like so many people who have never had the that sense of failure. Like some people have gotten what they've wanted a lot in life. I wouldn't say all the time, but maybe never had to deal with real failure, real rejection, and then when it does come around, then they don't know how to handle it. But if you start to kind of live in that discomfort of, I wouldn't say live in failure, but understanding what that feeling is and still being able to operate, having that not being able to shut you down from doing anything else, then you'll start to see that your motivation goes up. Anytime you get a no, instead of it discouraging you, it encourages you because you have some more feedback to kind of go off of. Feedback is one of the most crucial things that you can have if you're starting your own business. Like you need to know what's working, what's not, where you can improve. And if you're never getting anybody telling you, oh, this isn't good, or then you have nothing to improve on. And so we all need that feedback loop in order to achieve our highest goals. You're not gonna if you're not getting things on the first time and you're not getting any feedback, how do you expect to improve? I mean, yeah, you can make tweaks, but a lot of times it's internal things that we don't even see in ourselves. So it's like we need real feedback from, even if you classify it as hate online, it's like that's feedback. All feedback is, you can turn positive. Some people may be saying that they don't like your face, things that you can't even control, but it's just giving you something to understand. Just like, okay, well, maybe what I'm saying is still spot on. They just don't like the way that I look when I'm saying it. So, but that doesn't mean that now you might be able to stay on the subject matter that you have and just, you know, or have to make it a little bit more entertaining to distract the fact that you're ugly or something like that. So it's just little minor adjustments that you can make, but you need that feedback in order to understand what direction you want to go.
You said a few really key things. Number one, I like when you talked about failure because Robert Kiyosaki says that that's the problem with the American education system, and I know a little bit about that. I mean, I'm a trained educator and spent 13 years in a classroom, so I'm not just talking out of my butt. But the American education system, it rewards success, and then people who fail, you get a 30 on a test, you might get put in a corner and all of that kind of stuff. But what about what about helping that young person to not feel like a failure, but understand, okay, how do we work through what do we learn from from the mistakes that you have down there? How do we work through that? Because that's really what life is. And Dr. John Maxwell says he wrote a whole book on failing forward, fail forward. So you're right. If you haven't, if you're not failing, one 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 expert said it must mean that you're not trying. You're not failing because you're not trying. And one of the things that I've discovered as a coach, and which recently has made my job a lot more challenging, is that um, I guess today I'm just in coach mode, just being real forward. But a lot of people have gotten to be way too soft. You can't you can't tell them anything. And I was listening to some guys talk earlier. Uh, I was listening to sports radio, and the guys were saying how now Georgia, it gets hot, it gets blistering hot, and so guys in my generation, you would have two a day. You in the football team, you get two a day, and it's been hot in Georgia for a long time. Now I will admit that it's something about the summer heat now that's a little more intense than it was 25 years ago. I have to admit that. But the rules have totally changed. I mean, they've gone from one extreme to the next. There was a time where they did two a days, and now those jokers, they get out there in the morning, and from what I heard, they back at the house goofing off with the video games by 11:30, and that's it. No more practice. And so there was a time where, as a coach, I could get into a person and help them to get better. Now you gotta be real soft, real soft. And sometimes for some people, that's that's not helping. Because they still got that exterior. They got the exterior that they have, and they need somebody to get into them. And so, one of the things that uh, for some of us, Dre was calling it feedback. For some of us, we have to be able to accept critique. Nobody, and for some, the reason why you haven't seen any fruit in 20 years and no one can tell you anything. You know everything. You know everything about everything. No one can tell you anything. And now, here it is 20 years later, and you haven't seen a bump of progress? What kind of lunatic are you? Your lady can't tell you anything. Your dude can't tell you anything. Well, there's your problem. So the way to end your chaos is be able to accept some feedback. Some people, I'm not exaggerating. As a coach, some people, it don't matter how gentle you say it, they break out in tears. I mean, not a tear, full flood, water flood.
Mm-hmm.
You gotta. And so if the person who's on your team can't say anything to you, when you get into the marketplace, you're done because they're not going to tolerate that in the marketplace. You either can produce or they're going to let you have it, or they're not going to deal with you. They're not going to F with you at all. So if the people that you should be able to get, and so here's the pushback I'm getting. Oh, but that person don't know how to say it to me. Okay, then you need a mentor. Find that person who can say it to you right. But if you can't find anybody that can say it to you right, then you're the problem. Because somebody has to be able to say it to you and you can accept it. Okay, your dude, you don't like the way he says it, but who is it that can say it to you? Who is it that can say it to you? If you don't have anybody that can say it to you, there's your problem.
A lot of people go through that. I think we've talked about it just, when it comes to giving certain people advice who aren't necessarily ready to accept it or take it in some situations. Um, it takes a lot of discernment on our end is being people trying to help for when people just aren't getting it because it does become a waste of everybody's time involved. It's you're wasting their time because they're not gonna listen. You're wasting your time because they're not gonna listen. So that's where people who are giving advice need to utilize discernment too because a lot of times you can dedicate so much time trying to help somebody who isn't ready to be helped, and if you can't identify that, then now you're the person who with the problem because you're taking all of your your time and resources and putting it in a place where you're really seeing no return, no growth. And it's not I know a lot of people do that and feel like you're giving out of the kindness of your heart, but you're really taking away from yourself, and you're almost using that as a distraction as to not get your own things done and handle what it is that you need to do. So I do know a lot of people who will help others as a distraction from doing it is that they need to do. But if you're constantly helping somebody and you see no changes, then it doesn't make you a bad person for not continuing to offer those services. Like you have to value what you're telling people, and if that person doesn't see that value in it, then you can't force them to. So and I know that's it's very difficult for a lot of people who feel that help, and just kind of like how we were talking about earlier, with giving money to homeless people. A lot of times that's the way that you want to help somebody in that moment, but if that's not going to be the true solution, then you're just kind of doing it to pat yourself on the back and say that you tried to help them when you're really not doing anything. It's just that you're using that person almost as a catalyst to make yourself feel better. So it's a lot more, if somebody isn't receiving the help that you're trying to provide to them, then it's okay to stop providing that service to them. And I think a lot of people do end up burning themselves out because they don't recognize that, they're not recognizing the value exchange. Value is another thing that I wanted to talk about, because it's like you can be providing a service to somebody, like you can give financial advice to a friend for free, but you know how valuable that is for people. And it's like, so you can continue to, and you're giving them great advice, great service that people would pay thousands of dollars to have if they like actually understood, like if they could see the value. But that's like watering in soil that's not, fit to be grown on. So we have to identify that. And I'm guilty of it too, of helping people, or trying sitting down with people trying to help them make a budget, things like that. And that person never fully follows through. And you want to be mad at but that person never was trying to become become financially
You
stable.
was trying.
You trying to change their life, and it's like they're like, well, I don't really see the problem with how I'm living. So it's like, and then even later on, people can come to you for help and they're not even ready to make the changes that are necessary. And those are also the times when you have to cut it off. Like as I'm finally in my 30s, I can identify that so much quicker. When I was young, I stayed with people trying to help them with a project for weeks or something. And it's like, oh man. But now I'm at the point in my life to where I can no longer help you if you haven't started yourself. So a lot of people will come to me with ideas like, oh yeah, I got this idea for an app, or I want to build a website like this. And it's like, at first, yeah, people will come to me with just that, say, and then it's on me to figure out, okay, well, who are you trying to do this for? Who, what's the clientele? Like, I'm asking all of these questions to this person, to the point where they didn't have half of this. They just had the glimmer of the thought that they probably got from somewhere else, and was like, oh, I know somebody who could probably build that. And then that's when I realized, people will siphon your energy off of that, or siphon your ideas and knowledge. So if you don't have anything, like, you have to at least come to me with something tangible in order to get my help. I'm not helping anyone who just has the idea of something. And so that's helped protect my time, because I would be building a whole website for someone who hasn't even thought about who their customer is. You know what I mean? And so, like, over the years, that's some of the biggest lessons that I've had to learn. And I was convincing myself, I was like, well, you got to start somewhere. Not everybody has money. You need a portfolio. So I would think of all these ways to talk myself into helping somebody, and being like, this is just for, this is the right thing to do. But no, I was taking so much of my own time and really distracting myself, thinking, kind of fooling myself into thinking I'm being productive, when really I'm just wasting my own time.
So, in that book that you and I have read, and a couple of episodes ago, you were even telling people that they can listen to it via audio. Um, the good book, as some of our great grandparents and grandparents would call it. And for some people, what are you talking about? What's the good book? Okay, you research it, you'll know. So in that book, It talks about Yahushua doing miracles. I never saw, he walked on water, by the way. You call, most people know him as Jesus, his Hebrew name, Yahushua. So there's no evidence that he ever healed someone that didn't seek healing. And to your point, so often, oh, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. And some of us are the reason why we're in chaos right now, we're trying to help someone, that person may even share a bed with us, that is not doing anything to help themselves. And that's that codependency I was talking about at the beginning of the episode, that until you figure out how to be out of that, there's there's no end to your pain. Because here's this person who isn't trying at all. You're working three jobs. Now, one of the things that surprised me, Dr. George Fraser, who is an international speaker, one of the biggest business coaches in the world, he said something that shocked me. You know, he goes to all these conferences and speaks, and he said one of the things that, 'cause this guy asked him a question, what's one of the things that's really surprised you? After all these years, I think Dr. Fraser is deep into his 70s, maybe in his 80s. He says he's given his contact information to people and said to them, call me, let me know how I can help you. He says after 30 plus years, 40 plus years doing this work, he hasn't had one person to take him up on that offer. It's befuddling. So one of the things in one of our previous episodes we talked about was being able to follow simple instructions. For some of us, we've met our answer. I never forget somebody that I used to be cool with had the opportunity to have an audience with Ambassador Andrew Young. Ambassador Andrew Young gave this person his actual number because, of course, with a lot of these famous people, the number that most of us get is the number to the office. She got his actual number
Mhm.
with that same statement, hey, call me. So I said, hey, did you call him? No, 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 no. Me. I was guilty of that. I met one of my heroes years ago. And you know, I was shocked when he said that to me. And let me tell you what you're thinking, who made that mistake. You're thinking, well, I'll wait until I'm ready to call this person, and then I'll call this person. I got to get all of my. But the reason why the person said call me is because the idea is that you are not ready. We know we, in other words, when that person says that to you, you're ready enough for them to call. Because he wouldn't have said that to you if you weren't ready enough to call. Now, once you call, then you'll find out what you need to do to continue talking. So don't get confused by what Dre was saying earlier, because yeah, there's some people that I have taken the initiative to help, and I found out that this person wasn't ready for the help that I initiated, and then I had to retreat. But in this case, these people are coming up to Dr. George Fraser, engaging him, expressing an interest. He responds, to their expression of interest. He responds to them saying that they want help by saying, call me, and they won't even call. So, my question to some of you who are watching who feel like because this is the story that some of us run. Like, I'm all in this by myself. I'm a single this, I'm a single that. Nobody's trying to help me. It's just me. Okay, who has already offered their help to you, and because of pride, you haven't reached out to this person. This person has offered to help you, but you wouldn't dare let them know that you're in this predicament, so you're not going to call them. And so I guess you don't want the chaos to end because you won't reach out to the person who's offered to help, has the resources to help you.
I think you said it right there. A lot of people, and it sounds crazy, but a lot of people don't want the chaos to end. Some people have grown so comfortable within the chaos that they don't know what peace. They are kind of terrified of what peace may feel like, or they may be terrified of being bored in peace. Like, I know that happens in when we talk
Wow.
about the toxic
Oh, wait.
relationships and
No, no,
stuff.
no. I got to let you repeat that. You said they're afraid of what?
Afraid of peace, afraid
No,
of,
no. You said something else. You said they're afraid that they're going to be bored
yeah, bored
in
into
peace.
peace. Yeah.
No, no, no. I need you to elaborate on that. That's serious. I don't even think people understand that that's where they are. So go ahead and elaborate on that.
Yeah, I mean, you see it a lot of times. I think relationships are, some of the biggest examples of that. Like, you'll see someone in a very toxic situation when it comes to the relationships that they may continuously see themselves in. Um, and a lot of times that's just going with what's natural. You've grown up, you've kind of seen, you may have seen other dysfunctional relationships and have now like associated that with what you feel love is, or you feel that extreme outbursts of emotions, or just extreme situations may prove that somebody loves you, or you may test somebody in a way to show that they'll love you in a certain way. And that's when we become like, if there isn't a problem, then you have to make a problem because you're not used to being in a state where, okay, I don't have anything to latch on to, I don't have anything to complain about, or they themselves don't want to be looked at or viewed as boring and scare somebody off. So then they'll end up in these different scenarios. And when you do, when you're it's like subconsciously you're now looking for problems to start or problems to get into in order to keep up that passion. Sometimes you may view it as passion. Some people refer to it as love, but um, when you're seeking out, or you feel that that's the normalcy of the relationships that you've been in, then you start to seek out destruction and chaos, and you don't even, and it's not something that you would want to be in, but it's just, since that's something you're so accustomed to, now you're constantly finding yourself in these situations where you're dealing with someone who disrespects you, or dealing with someone who just has like sporadic ideas. And at first it's like, those sporadic ideas may take you on a fun adventure, but other times it can land you in some serious trouble. So when you start to play on those lines, then you really don't know where you can end up in the next couple of years. So that's something you always just have to be kind of pretty cautious of.
So a couple of things. I remember talking to a young lady, and she was so frustrated with a family member's decision to just tolerate abuse, physical abuse.
Hmm.
And there's outlandish reasons why people tolerate things. Her cousin, in this case, told her that even though she knew that the way that this guy was handling her was just horrible, His pipe game was too good for her to let up. So you got those kind of situations, and then I never forget. I think I read it somewhere where this lady was saying that in her dysfunction, she was willing to tolerate the abuse because of something that she had dealt with coming up. She thought that and this is to what you were speaking to earlier, she thought that his putting hands on her proved that he cared for her.
Hmm.
That's the high, let me tell you, that's the height of this dysfunction. That's the height of dysfunction. And one of my favorite movies, when you were talking, Dre, I'm dating myself quite a bit, is Mahogany. And Mahogany starring one of our first legitimate triple threats, Diana Ross, and her co-lead Billy D. And in that movie, she was kind of that character we're talking about, who she seemed to have a good thing that she almost let get away from her because of her her frame of mind. Now I'm not going to give the movie away. It's you know it's I think it's worth your time. People in our audience, it's a wonderful movie, especially if you are into black cinema, Mahogany. Um, yeah, yeah. There's a lot of people who the clock is ticking. The clock is ticking because for some people, they like Mahogany. You've got this thing, this good thing that if you can get your act together, you can keep. But if you don't get your act together, it's going to go away because somebody else is going to figure out that your loss, my gain. Your loss, my gain. So I kind of feel like, um, but there's one other thing I want to share. I want to share a situation with you, Dre, and get your impact, your input.
Okay.
Of course, you go to a club, you go to a restaurant, go to a bar, and I think this happens to women quite often. Well, actually, there's two scenarios I'm gonna share with you. Um, Actually, I was listening to the radio and heard this scenario, and then there's another one that I heard more recently. So this young lady, she went to this was on a popular radio show that I heard a couple of years ago. She went to a bar restaurant to meet this guy, and I think they were meeting. She was meeting this guy there. Um, Early in their relationship. I don't know that their relationship was far along yet. Well, while she's waiting for him to arrive, as often is the case when you're a young lady, an attractive young lady sitting at the bar, some guy notices her and offers to buy her a drink. But this guy, he takes it a step beyond that. He buys a whole bottle, and um, soon enough, the guy who she was waiting for, he arrives to
Hmm.
find this bottle and like, hey, what? I see you started without me. And she says, well, no, so and so, he. So now the guy who shows up, he's taken aback because he wants to know from her, why would you accept this bottle from him? And before I get into what she said, obviously he's assuming the worst because he's thinking, why would you let him put a whole bottle on the table?
Hmm.
What do you what do you say? Do you think that she should have allowed him to? put the bottle on the table? Should she have allowed him to buy her a drink? Because some of the feedback on the radio show was that, hey, you shouldn't even allow them to buy you a drink, period, because your date was on the way. What do you say?
I mean, that's an interesting scenario. Because those bottles are not cheap. Especially when you're talking about at a restaurant. Those could really typically run you about 200. So um, I think yeah, the anyone
Now,
buying a
that
bot.
depends. It depends if he gets a high end bottle. You can get a low end bottle for a lot less than two.
I don't know. You said this happened in Atlanta too, or you didn't say where it happened.
It was
Regardless,
in Atlanta. It was in Atlanta.
yeah, you're not getting no bottle from a restaurant under $200. I'm sorry. So that's already like an extreme. To me, that's an extreme gesture of buying one person a bottle of. Well, I don't exactly know what was it like a bottle of wine or
That's what I'm saying.
okay.
I don't know whether it was a bottle of, but I'm just saying that if it was a bottle of wine, it didn't have to hit 200. It depends on what it was.
Yeah, that's to me that's a big part of the scenario. Um, Depending on what type of restaurant it was, there's a lot of things that could, especially sitting at the bar. It's hard to say if she should have turned it down. I'm just gonna assume it's a bottle of wine instead of a $400 bottle. Um, it's like like you said, they're
Some
not
people,
far.
not to cut you off, but
Hmm.
some people who were calling in said that she shouldn't even have accepted a drink. Forget the bottle. They were saying that even if he bought her, which guys will buy a lady a drink, but he put a whole. Now he had some of that. He took a glass himself and went back to where he was. Once she told him that she was waiting for somebody, he didn't stay there. He went back to where he was, but he left the bottle there, which some people would say that was strategy. But and of course, there was thoughts about, anyway, I don't want to say anymore because I know I actually heard the dialogue. So
Hmm. It's just weird. I mean, I don't think I've ever. I'm trying to think of if I was meeting somebody at a restaurant like that, how I would feel. It just seems, I don't know. Normally, I'm there first, so to avoid any of that, those situations happening, so it's hard for me
even
to
put
kind of
yourself in
put
that
my yeah,
situation.
because it's like, I mean, how long did he have her waiting? Stuff like that's things that I'm thinking of. Like,
Now that's what came. That's one of the things that came up because if I remember correctly, he was late.
yeah, yeah. If you
He was
late,
late,
then
so
that's
this
that.
that
Yeah,
was
that
part of
changes
it.
some things. So I mean, that goes to being punctual. It's like, yeah, like it's not anything you want to see. But if she was waiting there for like let's say 30 minutes, you 30 minutes late, and somebody buys her a drink, you can't be mad at that situation. That's on you. And if that ended up leading to them having conversations, it's about being punctual. You shouldn't have scheduled that time because it's just like until you really put a ring on it, it's like everything is really free game. Like it's you never have anything on lock. You're always in constant competition. So somebody like you can go out with a girl and somebody buy her a drink while you're on the date with her. Now if she's uses it to and gives you some too, then you guys just drink on someone else's dime. So that can kind of it's hard to and it really just depends on who you are as a person. If somebody's insecure, then yeah, you'll definitely won't like that gesture and definitely feel attacked for it. But I mean, if you're secure in yourself, you've taken them on dates. Now it also comes to if it's a bottle that you couldn't afford, then that's something different as well. So there's too many factors for me to give a direct answer on how I would handle that situation or if I would be offended. But yeah, that's just the risk of being late. Honestly, being late on a date, anything can happen. So you always want to be punctual. So if that's what that would be my advice for anyone listening to how you should handle that. Just be on time, and you won't have to deal with that.
Yeah, so that was part of her pushback. It turns out, if I remember correctly, the guy was bent out of shape, and that was it. He felt like it was a breach of trust. He felt like he came all the way across town to go on a date with her. He ran into traffic, if I remember his pushback on why he was late, and that's why he was late. And he felt some kind of way about there being a whole bottle on the table. He felt like the guy must have got the digits, because why would he put a whole bottle on the table? So I kind of agree with your sentiments. I I feel as though guys are going to shoot their shot, and if she's an attractive woman and she's sitting at the bar, I'm not going to be bent out of shape if he bought her a drink. I might be curious about a whole bottle, but I'm going to listen to hear what she has to say about that whole bottle. If the guy's still there, because I'm not easily intimidated, the guy's still there, I might invite him over and say, "Hey, man, I appreciate you, you know, getting us this bottle," and just leave it at that. And if she's that easily won over, then great that I found out early. So that's kind of that. Um, but going back to this idea of failing forward, I'm going to share another scenario, kind of in that same space that happened recently. Um, so, a couple of sisters, mom, they go to a restaurant, all adults, and interesting enough, a couple of young guys with what probably could be their dad, they go to a restaurant. The women are there first. The guys come in. There's you know, there's some eye play between one of the young men, one of the young women. And when it comes time to for the ladies to pay, because remember they got there first, the guy who was making the eye contact with one of the ladies, who actually ended up with the check in her hand, he came rushing over, grabbed the grabbed the check to take care of the table. So there's some thoughts on, okay, what was his motive for grabbing the bill? One idea is that, well, he's just, you know, being a gentleman, but because of the eye contact that was made between him and the person who he grabbed the bill from, there's some speculation that he was interested, but just didn't have the courage to take that next step. He paid the bill, but he didn't have the courage to take that next step and say, "Hey, what's up with the digits?"
Mm-hmm.
What's your thoughts?
I mean, that's what happens when you lead with money. A lot of times if you don't have the confidence to, actually strike up a conversation, then I mean, you're hoping that the money gonna take you 100% of the way, and it's not. So, people will be in that situation and think that, because you pay, that the girl is now obligated just to kind of give you her number off of the strength, but that's not necessarily true. So, it's like, If you wanna, to me, that sounds very reckless with your money to me. And you haven't even spoken a word to this girl, and you're gonna offer to pay for the whole table. That's you better than me. I wouldn't do that, but I mean, I know of some situations where I could see that happening, or girls have ways that they can, get people to, pay for certain things, or maybe encourage a little financial help in some situations. So to me, it's especially in Atlanta, it's a game of people trying to see what they can get for not doing anything. I would know better than to. I don't know. That didn't seem like the smartest thing. If he did want to, showcase or lead with money, then that would be a situation where you could maybe send a bottle to somebody, to the table, covering the whole tab. I don't, and then you still got your own food to pay for. That just sound like I don't know if maybe he didn't have a budget. Obviously, he didn't have a budget, so it's like it's hard to say what type of other financial decisions he makes. That would be if I'm the girl, I'd be like, that seems like a turn. You don't even know, like, why are you just spending this much money? That means that, well, the money doesn't mean much to you, which some people might take that as a sign of wealth, but to me that doesn't say that. That just sounds irresponsible to me. That's all I can hear. I'm just hearing irresponsibility when I hear stories like that. I don't really think he, but so many people are taught to lead with money, but yeah, that's not gonna get you what you want ultimately. So I think that was a bad idea on the guy's part. I can't. I mean, there's really no blame on the girls. They were just sitting there. And I would let someone come pay my pay my tab too, but I can't
So,
put any blame on them.
so it is possible that he was just led to be generous. That still exists. I guess what made me think that he might have been interested is because of the eye contact that was going on between he and the young lady. And for me, going back to what we were saying in terms of failing forward, I think perhaps, of course, only he knows, what his motive was. But I think that he probably wanted to get the number, and that was part of the package. Paying for the meal was part of it because I've heard of men doing that in plenty of situations. Um,
Still, to me though, that's still just I call that introducing someone to a vibe you can't maintain. And I don't know that person's financial situation, but I feel like that's such a weird way to start off a relationship in that capacity. Just for to me, I mean, I know it happens all the time, but I've just never been. I mean, I've never had enough money to lead with it, so I don't know how active if I did have those type of funds, but that just doesn't seem like now anytime they go out, they'd be like, "Oh well, this person you got it last time before you even know us. Now you know us, and we're good friends. So now they're expecting you to pay." I just wouldn't introduce that precedence at the origins of any type of relationship. So that's why it sounds crazy to me. But yeah, I don't know.
Interesting. Well, I definitely wanted to get your feedback on both of those scenarios, and I'm curious about in that first case whether, of course, we never know whether or not the guy got the number. She would never tell us if he got the number in the first case or not, you know. But what she did tell us is that the guy who she was waiting for, he he stopped dealing with her. He was so frustrated by that situation. Very interesting.
I mean, that was a play on the. I think that was the the idea for the guy who sent the bottle. It was to send the if you knew somebody was coming, then yeah, it was to send insecurities to him. For her not to recognize that might have been a problem for her because now she doesn't realize that she's dealing with someone. I wouldn't say that the other guy is manipulative, but he definitely has um, tactics that he's using. So it's like I feel like a lot of people don't ever pay attention to other people running game, and it's like if you're not able to, especially in Atlanta, if you're not able to spot that out, then you can get yourself into, you know, yeah, she might get this guy, but I mean, or the guy who sent the bottle, but he might be that might be his game where he does that with multiple women who he with. So she might be setting herself up for a life of infidelity. I don't
Him
know.
buying
So
bottles.
it's just like, and that, but those are just some of the cautionary tales, especially anyone dealing with in the dating market. Like, look at how somebody treats money. Like, if they're treating it like it grows on trees and it doesn't, then I look at those as red flags. Even if even when girls are spending more than they need to be spending, it's like, okay, you're either not paying attention to how much you're spending, or you don't value the way that you make your money enough. Like, you may not put much effort into getting your money for in some situations, but how seriously you take your finances is a big thing for me. So when I see something like that, or you willing to make a very large purchase in like an impulse like that, then that's just a red flag to me.
Well, I think this is another good one, and I hope that what we shared. Of course, everything isn't for everybody, but hopefully we've spread it around enough to say something that will help in the chaos for those people who are experiencing the chaos. Peace is wholeness. And so most people have an area where they're experiencing some chaos. Okay. Um, so our goal is, with all the things that are going on, is to provide some ideas on, or provide a route to experiencing the peace, experiencing the wholeness. And maybe you might be one of those people, you might be like, hey, I'm good, I'm whole. You know someone, it might be your cousin, it might be your nephew, it may be your child, that is experiencing some of the chaos. And our hope is that something that we said is something that you can share to help in the chaos for them. So,
Hmm. And one last thing, peace is not perfection. I think we were saying earlier that people are afraid of living in peace because of boredom, but I also think that people fear that once they have a peaceful life that they need to be perfect in order to maintain it. But that's not necessarily true. Like, you can still make mistakes, but being at peace with things is not lingering on the mistakes that you made. So, continue to, you can fail and still have peace in yourself. Like, so continue to go out, try your best, and be at peace with the fact that you're trying your best, not the fact that you've done something perfect, or be beating yourself up because you've made a mistake. So that was just the last thing I wanted to leave people with.
yeah, learn from, we have to learn from our mistakes, learn from them.
Indeed,
That's the whole purpose for them, to learn from them.
for sure. Well, thank you everyone for joining us for another episode. Please remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And we will see you again in 2 weeks.
Peace.